we just enjoyed
Peace.
a beautiful film. We just enjoyed a beautiful film, Art of Rap, making something out of nothing. This is in celebration of Hip Hop 50. We would like to give sincere gratitude to Auburn Research Library for having this venue and an avenue to keep this art form and this culture alive. My name is Alex Acosta. I'm the executive director, co-founder of Soul Food Cypher. We utilize freestyle rap to transform individuals and communities. I am here with my brothers and talented MCs and also academics as well. To my left, we have the good brother Joe Stu.
Greetings.
Joe Stu, share a little bit about yourself.
My name is Joe Stew. My mama named me Joseph Stewart. But I, like Alex said, I'm a member of Soul Food Cypher. I am an MC, an educator, a visual artist, a tattoo artist, a music producer, as well as an academic. I teach hip-hop at Clark Atlanta University, and I also teach visual arts at Campbell Elementary.
Dope. And to my right, we have my brother, Anand Griot. Share a little bit about you.
Peace. Anand Griot, born Amaria Jackson. I am a Barry White impersonator. No, I'm working on that. Definitely honored to be a member of Soul Food Cypher, MC, freestyle MC, songwriter, griot, poet, playwright. Also an academic. I teach hip-hop criminology for Pendulum Inc. I am a published author, locked up but not locked down, a guide to surviving the American prison system, poems for a barfly, and I'm actually currently working on my third book, and I haven't told you much about that, but that's happening too.
Well, give some love for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to keep this an intimate conversation. There's going to be a lot of back and forth as well, so we would definitely love to get to know who's in our crowd.
It's packed in here.
I always love, in a moment like this, I always love to quote Jay.
Yes.
And I love to do this when I'm on stage hosting something. He said, the homie said, Hove, it ain't many of us. I told him, less is more. Nigga, it's plenty of us. And I always feel that way when we come together,
That's right.
even when those numbers seem small. Sometimes those numbers are more magical than we even think about.
Absolutely. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Looking at both of your careers, you both are very, very talented MCs. I know that you all can spit off the top, but I also know that you all have a nasty pen game. But I also know that you all are multi-hyphenated. Looking at this documentary, it reminded me of something I've been thinking of and kind of stewing on, no pun intended. And that is hip-hop at its greatest is like a street university. The individuals that you saw in this film were highly educated, and many of them didn't have the opportunity to go to college or to have higher advancement in education. But yet there's something about hip-hop that challenged them to be knowledgeable and to have knowledge in a lot of different areas. Some of the MCs were also DJs. I noticed that a lot of them, were rocking Seratos, and they were always referencing the past. So I want to talk about how hip-hop has been a university for you and has also shaped you and how you've moved in the world.
I'll take it first. All right, so I grew up in the Bronx, and that was like my really early education with hip-hop. It was really, literally all around me. And my earliest memory, there's two memories. One is actually going to a barbecue park jam and seeing Melly Mel rock out. Like I saw Melly Mel rock out. Now this is Melly Mel. This isn't like this is not Jerry Curl, Melly Mel. This is post Jerry Curl with the swole muscles, but he was killing the microphone, and everybody was just staring up at the stage like, wow, like he's still here. And the other memory is I was in kindergarten and I was on the bus and I was going to school, and I remember the kid sitting next to me. He was writing on the window, and I couldn't understand what he was writing. So I asked him, what are you writing? He said, I'm writing my name. So I was like, oh, okay. And like I wrote my full name out. He's like, no. That's not how you do it. You're supposed to have a nickname. So I gave him my nickname, which was LJ, but that had no relevance to the tag name that he was doing. Now keep in mind, he was a little older than me, but he couldn't been but in second grade. So imagine a second grader tagging up a bus, and showing a kindergarten student, this is how you write graffiti. So that was like my full-on introduction into hip-hop. It was really through graffiti and actually through breakdancing too, because Rocksteady lived on the floor below me. So I would come and bring groceries in, and I would see kids doing backspins and, doing windmills and so forth. So I literally had no choice but to participate in hip-hop because it was literally all around me.
How has that informed your career?
It's informed my career in several ways. One, I saw the way that culture affects the individual. So I'm also a elementary school teacher, and I can see how where the majority culture or the culture of the majority will teach, inform, nurture, and sometimes hurt a certain individual based on what that culture is made up of. But it has also given me a sense of familiarity with my students because even though I might not know the new 21 Savage song, I do know the root. Chill. But I know the root of it, and I can always tap into that root at all times. Whether it's, something that's far off to the left, I can always find that thin sliver line that's rooted into what I grew up in, which was the kind of foundation of hip-hop. And it's still the same here. I was even say in Atlanta, the same tenets of seeing a kid doing a windmill as I go up the lobby, that's the same influence of a kid going on TikTok and seeing the new dance craze. It's the same lineage. It's just is manifested differently.
Thank you for that. Anon?
That was very nice of you.
Thank you.
I'm still gonna hate a little bit on TikTok dances, but that's neither here nor there.
As you would.
Well, no, I'm going to frame this because I did ask him two questions. We're
Yes.
going back to hip-hop as like a university. Joe Stu had the Northeastern experience, and you had a Southern experience.
Yes.
How was hip-hop for you a university in your experiences between living in the South and the West?
So let's get into it. Joseph Stewart is from the Bronx,
BX.
BX borough, where hip hop is, as we see it in this physical modern incantation where it is said to have begun. I am so far away from that I could be from Nepal. I was born and raised in Helena, Arkansas, in the Mississippi Delta, in the 80s, in a time where hip-hop was not readily available on the radio, on the television, and very few people even knew anything about hip-hop. The very interesting story I can tell is that I was introduced to hip-hop through John Wayne. Follow me. So John Wayne had all these Westerns, and I watched movies with my grandfather. I was raised by my grandfather and grandmother. And there was one called Big Jake. Big Jake was John Wayne's character. Little Jake was his grandson. The engines captured Little Jake, and Big Jake came to handle things, right? So that movie, me and my granddad, John Wayne, the character, early on in my life, meant a lot to me. Please don't tell Mr. Chuck D. Let him know that I learned out later on, right? But because of that, this radio DJ had a song called Daha by the Rapping Duke. And it was John Wayne rapping. And it was a joke song. I didn't know that then. I just remember while you were in diapers and wet in the sheets, I was at the Ponderosa rapping to the beat. Daha, daha. And it clicked. just the whole science of everything that was going on, the way the words were linked together. And up until that point, and even after that point, spent a lot of time in church. And on Saturdays, heard the Saturday morning fish fry, all of the blues playing. So I've been surrounded by very lyrical, artistic offerings, but nothing that sounded like hip hop. But I was already being primed for that without knowing it, because the blues man is raunchy and introspective and clever and will turn a word upside down. So just even that very early introduction to hip hop already caused me to push multiple things together in order to approximate and understand it. So whereas Mr. Stewart had the ability of just almost instinctively and intuitively knowing what hip hop was, I have been analyzing hip hop from the moment I was introduced to it. I've been breaking it down, trying to find my place, moving others out of position, chess, checkers, dominoes, jumping jacks, double dutch, like all of that.
Spades.
And so,
Chill.
so I would say the first way by which hip hop was a classroom for me is that I had already thought of it as a cultural currency.
There you go.
Even though I didn't know what that was. But I knew that it was kind of like blues, and I knew that it was kind of like gospel, and then the Western came into it, the movies came into it, and I was already reading at an absurd level for whatever reason, probably because I was in Arkansas. So all of these things came together, and then you hear Cinderella Dana Dane, which is probably the song they should have never let me hear, because Dana Dane recreates Cinderella as a dude. I knew the story of Cinderella because I'd read that already, and the fact that he was able to do that, and I felt like I understood what that genius was then, and not a lot of other people did. So I was already 100% committed running with that. I put hip hop in my back pocket, and it began to flavor almost everything that I saw.
Real dope, real dope. And it's interesting that you talk about your experience in how being in Arkansas, you're rooted in the blues. One of the things that stood out to me in the film was that hip-hop created nothing but reinvented everything. And I think about, your experience, with that, and even kind of receiving like hip-hop secondhand, but really understanding the undertone of really what's happening as well. So I think that's really dope. In the film, and this film was produced, if I'm not mistaken, in the late aughts, early 2010s? 2012. Yes.
It was starting.
R.I.P. old Kanye.
Yeah.
Did you notice him rapping for 80% of the verse without moving his hands at all?
He was warming up.
But rapper hands are a thing too.
Yeah.
Like you can identify.
You got him out to
Yeah, yeah. It was. I just found that to be interesting in retrospect.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow. This is pre-Amber.
It's pre-Amber.
Yeah. So it's interesting because Soul Food Cypher started in 2012.
Wow.
And as I've shared with Victor before, I used to literally walk over here. I lived in Old Fourth Ward, right across the street. And as I was coming up and writing a proposal for Soul Food Cypher, I would come here because I have a very good collection of books, and I would research about ciphers, park jams, block parties, learning about the good life, before the documentary came out, and just really researching. So I'm very thankful for this institution, and it just brings everything, full circle. But at that time, and it's interesting because the film, they were talking about to the MCs and asking, why isn't hip-hop respected? As we celebrate Hip-Hop 50, my next question is hip-hop finally respected?
That's a great question. I think hip-hop is starting to become respected because of the foray in hip-hop academia. I think they're now hip hop approaching its 50th year is now finally at a place where we can actually go back and analyze in a very academic level and see how it shifted culture in very concrete ways. So I do think that hip hop is starting to be respected in certain areas. I do think we have a long way to go because of how profitable hip hop has been. So because of hip hop being such a marketing machine, it has kind of deteriorated away from some of the other cultural aspects of it. And you can see in this series, we're covering breaking, we're covering Atlanta's contribution to hip hop, we're covering graffiti, we're covering all these different elements. But what has kind of been a roadblock is the world sees hip hop as rap
Entertainment.
and entertainment, as opposed to all of these multitude of cultural elements that come along with it. There's a big debate about and this is kind of in another element, but breaking going into the Olympics and how it's with rap as far as the element of rapping, where so I think it's it's definitely the long way to go because of so much work has been done to use hip hop as a marketing tool and solely that.
Yeah. Well, no.
Yeah. My response is twofold. The first is a question. What art form is actually respected? Like, we really, can we quantify how many of those in one sense? But the sense where I feel like I hear you're coming from is a quandary, a question that I've had over and over again, and I still haven't been able to take that thorn out of my side. And it's, how do we allow this art to be treated like an artistic discipline versus merely a cash cow? And so, to go back to it, the example I like to use is the artist Thomas Kincaid, and I don't know if we can call him an artist or not, but I know that you can get Thomas Kincaid prints everywhere. You can get them at Michael's, right? They sell a lot. So Thomas Kincaid, in theory, as an artist, is very popular and very widely accepted. Yet, only an alcoholic drinking Boone's Farm would say that he compares to Picasso or Basquiat or Van Gogh or any of the even lesser known artists. And please forgive me for being slightly hatery, but we literally at one point in time had a conversation about the merits of KRS-One versus Nelly. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was Nelly actually dropped a diss song to KRS-One.
This was actually a little bit earlier than this documentary that came out. Yeah, it was 2002, so it was about 10 years earlier. Nelly had a song called Number One.
I Am Number One.
Which KRS-One took offense to, because he also has a song by the name of I Am Number One. And there was a little tension between there. And I think Nelly felt a bit offended because his perspective was like, hey man, I'm just coming out.
Now I think, didn't he say, I'm tired of y'all?
I'm tired of the old.
Say what ain't real hip hop?
Yeah, same with real hip hop.
But there was also regionalism in there too.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Regionalism.
We can't ignore that.
He should.
Wow.
And he deserves it.
How the tables have turned.
And he deserves it. So if I may kind of ring that back in, but these things all come together. The question is, what is this artistic discipline? And are we able to analyze the artistic discipline outside of the economics that it brings in? Because, to reiterate, there are certain movies that, we don't say they're incredible movies. Revenge of the Nerds is not an incredible movie.
Cult classic.
We love cult classic. We love Revenge of the Nerds. We'll pop it on when it comes on. We don't say that it is Schindler's List or Life is Good or Color Purple. We don't.
The Color Purple.
The unfortunate thing is, because we've allowed hip-hop to be so commodified and we've used the dollar bills that it creates to justify and validate it, that we very rarely have a conversation about the artistic merit that isn't inextricably connected to the dollar. And that's antithetical of the foundation of the craft itself.
Shame. Thank you, brother. I have one more question, and I'm going to open it up to the crowd. There were a lot of voices that were not present in the film. For one, could have definitely been. I was just about to say Atlanta. Yeah. So the South was noticeably out. I mean, they had Bun B, and that was about the only Southern person.
And that was like 3 minutes.
Yes, if that. It was probably 1 minute. But then also a lot of women's voices were missing, and especially women from the South as well. So were there any voices that you all wish you would have heard in that film?
Well, I mean, number one, you just said that, right? I always want to hear the sisters' perspectives. Like, I would have loved to hear, I mean, it's 12, so like, I don't remember how long Rhapsody had been moving, you know? But maybe a Jean Grey, maybe a Jane Doe, you know? A Rod Digger, a Missy, right? Yeah. And those specifically who are kind of a diversified representation of things. And watch, I walk very softly. I'm not speaking about woman, femininity, womanhood, forms of expression. But just like with my male MCs, I would like to see a dexterity and a fluidity of an identity. I want to grow from the complexity of it. So I would have loved to seen a bit more complex representation there. And of course, always and forever, if you're having a conversation about anything, call 3 Stacks. I know he's not going to pick up, but maybe he'll give you a sound bite. He's going to leave you with something to chew on.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when we look at this, it points out a few things. It points out to what we can evolve in some ways as to what we consider the purer form of hip hop. And so we stayed mostly on the East Coast. And then we moved a little bit to the West Coast. I almost feel like it would have been great to have stayed with the pioneers and given them that look. But yeah, Smo Sisters, Dre 3000, but I do understand that they were probably trying to squeeze a whole lot in a small amount of time and probably didn't plan for the conclusion. Yeah. Who was it that said?
Who didn't need to be on there?
It was Dana Dane who said, you know, that he knows the ending of his verse before he starts writing it. They probably could have done a little Dana Dane and know where it was going to end, and it would have helped
that
them.
part. Chino XL. He had some dope bars though. No way.
1994 Chino XL.
You still on the gnaw on that? Yeah, Chino.
You'd have to have been there, but I understand. I respect that.
So little known fact, Chino XL was one of the first rappers on Rick Rubin's Def American label. Once Rick Rubin left Def Jam, he started a label called Def American, which later turned into American Records because he also held a press conference to bury the word deaf. But once he did that, he got Chino XL, who was managed by the author of the Jay Dilla autobiography, Dan Charnas. So there was a little bit of connection there, who was also helpful in Ice-T's career. And I think a lot of the people that were chosen were connected through Ice-T. It was like, yo, it's my homie. Yo, come on, can we do a soundbite? But to answer your question, the people who I wish were in there, I'm gonna be specific. We should have seen Roxanne Shante. We should have seen Sha Rock. We should have seen we should have seen Sweet Tea. We should have seen we saw MC Lyte. We definitely should have saw Queen Latifah. We should have saw Moni Love. We definitely should have saw Lady of Rage. We should have saw JJ Fad. We should have saw Medusa off of West Coast.
Yeah.
We should have saw Mia X. We should have saw Lauryn Hill. I don't know.
Well, she probably wasn't.
No comment.
Erykah Badu.
And Erica Badu.
Absolutely.
As far as Southern rappers, we should have talked to Jay Prince. We should have spoke to. Tony Draper. We should have spoke to 8 Ball and MG.
Scarface.
Scarface, Ghetto Boys. We should have spoke to Uncle Luke. Now, not quote unquote a rapper, but Luke is probably one of the most important figures in hip hop when it comes to freedom of speech. So those are some of the key figures that I think we're missing along there. I know there were probably some difficulties getting there, but I think that have represented a more holistic approach to that. But especially later Rage, I was like, yo, it should have been way more West Coast female MCs out there, because I think, and she's, even though she's from Virginia, what she did in being able to hold it down within the Death Row family, I mean, that's saying a lot.
Also, Rakim's part was too short, but that's just me personally.
You wanted Rakim to spit a EP?
Sir, I literally have a cassette tape tattooed on my chest that says "Microphone Fiend," because when that song came out, it solidified what I was gonna be. So that's just subjective. Yeah. More to God.
No doubt, no doubt. Well,
Without Lotto.
we have a few minutes to take questions for our panelists.
Yeah.
How'd you all hear about this series or this event tonight?
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's right. You were there.
No, so you remember these two? No. What?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Respect.
Because of the internet.
And some of it's a facade. Some of it's smoke and mirrors. Like they're really not making that, but they can definitely fake the funk. Would you like to answer that? Second round.
Yes, I would like to first say, I'm not sure if we're going to be talking about record sales much longer. We were actually having a conversation about this a bit ago, the idea that streams have been overblown, that even the streaming services have overblown the streams, that there hasn't, not the best accounting for those streams, that the artists themselves aren't really making any money off of those streams anyway. And so it presents a very interesting quandary, right? And maybe it goes back to that point I was playing around with earlier. The way by which some of this money is sucked away actually creates more space for the art. And I say this because a lot of people are making money off of merch, for example, right? You're making merch, making money off merch, and if you got dope merch and your songs are kind of cool, and some people are rocking with you, but I can't even see that hat, but that's a dope hat. And if that was my hat, and I gave you my album with that hat, you want that hat, I get my album sold. Guess what I didn't have to do? I didn't have to pander in order to get that album sold. right? So some of the straightaway, easy way to get to the finish line may have been feel like those detours may have created more avenues. So I'm more inclined to be optimistic about this, that we are going to see space for more authentic hip hop. And Tyler, the creator, has really shown in the last few years how being avant-garde and still being committed and connected to the craft can get you acclaim, can bring you success, but can keep you once again from being bound by the powers that be telling you how it has to be. And so I think when we find those other avenues, we are in a better sense to see it existing in a way that's still connected to the craft, even if subjectively one thing isn't my favorite as much as the other, but that is not completely depleted and stripped and torn down from what it really could and should be.
Absolutely. Joe, would you like to take this?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it in three steps. So one, to answer your question, yes, I do see that there's going to be a I don't want to say downfall, but there's going to be a decreased interest in hip hop. There's two reasons why. One, because it's been pretty much oversaturated. I know a lot of people have been, making the hoopla. There hasn't been a #1 hip hop album in the year yet. We're almost halfway through the year.
We got one now. Uzi did it.
Oh, Uzi did it?
Uzi did it.
Oh, I Wanna Rock?
And
I Wanna Rock?
was it Lotto? Did Lotto do it?
It was Lotto. Okay. Or just first female rap. However, I do feel that there is going to be a decreased interest because of the accessibility of hip hop and the accessibility of rap. Everyone can rap.
Kind of.
Everyone has the ability not only to rap, but to put out music and to actually become a rap artist. If you wanted to today record a song on your phone, not go to a studio, not book studio time, not get
Don't
with
give
people.
away the secrets.
It's on YouTube. If you want to put out a song on your phone, you can upload it to SoundCloud. You could record it on GarageBand. You can get the beats downloaded. Matter of fact, you don't even have to make the beat. You can go to a YouTube channel and rent a beat. I'm gonna rent a beat from you. If I really am cheap, I'm gonna go to AI and I'm gonna type in a mood, and then the beat is gonna be produced for me, and then I'm gonna rap over that. Or I might go to AI chat line. Right, and then just type up the lyrics for me. Cool. So the one thing that I do see us getting diluted in is the accessibility of it. There's really a large gap in that, and we talked about this earlier. There is a erasure of gatekeepers. Gatekeepers have kind of been erased from there. There's no gatekeepers because if I got the numbers, it don't matter if you say I'm whack. It's straight to consumer. So I got 2,000 followers that say I'm I'm great. So I don't care what you're doing right now. So those are the two reasons. I think the difference in jazz was you had to learn an instrument. And I am not one to downgrade, to diminish hip hop and the skill level that it takes to be a hip hop artist. However, there is a difference between sitting down every day for an hour trying to learn saxophone, right, in order for you to, get to a point where you're able to play in a band, or can I, just jump on stage. Even back in our heyday, I would say, like, when we would go to Apache Cafe, you couldn't just go up to the mic and battle. Or you couldn't just go up to the mic and say, hey, I got a song I want to do. I'm going to do my whole album for y'all. Y'all come out now. This is my No, hold on, homie. Let's see you have some bars first.
Yep.
And let's see what can you do? Can you rock this crowd? Can the crowd get along with you? And not the crowd that's all your family and friends. We're talking about the people who paid to get in here. Can they get on the same vibe as you? And in that, there's the two part of this. There's a gap in mentorship within hip hop. I think Soul Food Cypher, shout out to us. We have a good standard.
I'd
of
like
that
to
in-
thank ourselves.
Yeah, I would like to pat ourselves on the back for that. But there is no apprenticeship for rappers. When jazz musicians came up, Miles Davis had to apprentice under
Yardbird,
Yeah.
Charlie Parker.
under Charlie Parker. You know, he couldn't just come up and he had to learn under the masters. But with
Dizzy
hip hop
Gillespie,
today,
et cetera.
with rappers, you tell them, hey, study under this person. Study on him, hater. Right? So we have a disinterested attitude towards that. And I think once we start to get back to that, we'll be able to nurture and cultivate that a little bit more. I do think on a good end, to piggyback off of what Ananda Griot was saying, is now I do think, even though in the same vein it's easier for you to put out your stuff, I do think now there will be less corporate involvement with what you're creating. So we will get eventually back to an original, consistent flow of creative, like original manifestations of hip hop, as opposed to, oh, that's hot, let me recreate that and then put my own spin on it. So
Also,
Yeah.
AI won't recreate Melly Mel and or Raekwon and Ghostface.
Right.
Or any of the greats. So there's another way by which we still got a way that we can squeeze
Called
out
spirit.
some opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm gonna add on that, and I agree tenfold to what both of my brothers said. But I'm gonna counter one thing that you did say about hip hop artists not playing any instruments. I think about the DJ and being a DJ
Thank
as
you.
well.
thank you.
To
Thank you.
turn a turntable into an instrument where you scratch and you cut, like that is an instrument. But then
And a scientist.
yes, absolutely. You're a technologist. You know what I mean? You're a futurist. You're thinking. So honestly, I have come to a realization where I don't separate jazz from hip hop, from the blues. It's all a continuation of African ancestral memory. You get what I'm saying? And it's amazing because they were talking about how the art really informs their thinking process and how they approach their art form. So here we are in the diaspora. Drums are taken away from us in the Americas. You know, other places had drums. So they continue. I think about Cuban culture. You know, within Cuban culture, we have bata drums, you know what I'm saying, congas, et cetera, et cetera. But black Americans, that was completely stripped away from us as a people. So, South Bronx, 1973, August 11th, Sedgwick and Cedar, you have Kool Herc coming from Jamaica, and he's spinning the drum beats. But the drum breaks in particular are that is what we heard as a black people. So in that crowd, you have black Americans, you had Jamaicans, you had Puerto Ricans, you had Haitians, you have all these people that are part of the diaspora. But that DJ is that one who's back spinning and continuing those breaks, but then also mixing and blending those breaks. There's a genius in there. There's a beauty within that. And it's a continuation of our culture. And when we really talk about like authentic hip hop, we're talking about utilizing what you have, but also the past and making it new as well. You get what I'm saying? So once the industry got involved, I mean, I look back, I know we were talking about, you know, Q-Tip and, you know, you know what I'm saying, like Tribe Called Quest, et cetera, et cetera. But their first few albums were fucking genius. Yeah. De La Soul, because it's like they were referencing and using samples, but once the industry got involved, it's like, okay, we can't use these samples because it costs more money.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? So like that, is it hip hop? Is it hip hop anymore? You know what I'm saying? Like for real, because like as a DJ.
Like finding the samples was hip hop itself.
Yes.
Melding them together was hip hop itself. Making that whatever makes sense under your own confines was hip hop itself, and attempting to streamline that, be like, well, no, but these are the sounds where, that's not hip hop.
So coming back around, and I do think that the expression, like hip hop could be anything. It melds, it takes what you have and making it something new. One of the issues with today's music is that usually every 2 or 3 years, there's a new sound.
Yeah.
The trap sound has been the sound for the last 10 to 15 years. There's no new innovations of sound, and also the funk is out of it. I had the pleasure of DJing the last Cypher, and like I really went back, dug into the crates, play R&B and like backspinning and like even just making beats out of soul samples. It's nothing like that. So at the end of the day, I think that's one of the biggest problems. I'm going to end on this note. That ties in the question about jazz music and its prominence. There's a beautiful book called Mumbo Jumbo by Ishmael Reed. Highly, highly recommend it for anybody who's interested. And it's about this plague that takes over New Orleans. And it causes people to shake uncontrollably, and they lose their senses and they start, gyrating and all this stuff. And they call it Just Grew. But Just Grew is essentially jazz music. And it's written about around turn of the century, not early 1900s, New Orleans. And it talks about the influence of black culture. It gets into black spirituality. It's a very interesting book, but it does predict hip-hop culture. It talks about how Just Grew eventually wanes, and they were able to control it through the mechanisms of pop culture and turn it into all these other things. But it does predict hip-hop. Very good book. And that was actually one of Tupac's favorite authors, if I'm not mistaken. So highly, highly, highly recommend it. Oh, and actually, yes, there's elements of cloning in that book.
Yeah.
It's so It's a weird book, but it's very, very good.
I'll be reading it.
Yes, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
Highly recommend it. So on that note, we would like to thank the Auburn Research Library. We would like to thank you all for coming out. Hopefully, we made your Thursday evening a wonderful evening. And last plug, I am producing Rapport, and also Soul Food Cypher is producing ATL Park Jam, August 12th.
Oh, boo.
Yes.
Well, you're going to miss out because you're not going to meet my mom.
It is. It's from 12 to 8. It's from 12 to 8, and she's here for, 3 or 4 days?
My mom's not coming to see Beyonce. She's coming to see me.
Hey.
She really is. My mom's from Arkansas.
Yes, we will be posting that. We're partnering with the Beltline. The Beltline is helping us present this wonderful occasion in which we're celebrating not only Hip-Hop 50, but Atlanta's unique contribution to the culture.
We are.
Yes, we are.
In fact, here are 2 flyers that will show you where and when we will be.
And all the dates are back.
And when you follow Soul Food Cypher on IG, it'll be easy to follow Joe Stew and Anon the Griot as well.
One of my friends, she's from New York, and she was going to come here tonight, but something came up, and I am going to represent her face. Because when I tell you, Michelle, she would have adored this. She would have had 50 questions, and y'all would still be sitting here. So.
Well, we look forward to having Michelle at our next Cypher. Well, again, thank you all. You all have a wonderful night.
Thank you.